Hello, welcome back to my channel. I hope y'all are having a good day whenever you decided to click on this video. Today is Saturday for me. I just got done with lunch and picking up my wedding dress. It finally came in. I'm getting married later this year and I'm hyped for it. But what I'm even more hyped for, what is more immediate, is my vlog of Falls Boys, which is what we're doing today. I am really hyped to finally read this book. I say finally, it did come out I think like early last week, but I am hyped to read it. I've seen a lot of mixed reviews on Goodreads from my friends. Some people have given this 5 stars, some people have given it 2 stars, and I'm excited to see where I, no pun intended, fall. I've had some kind of like mixed luck with Penelope's work in the past year or so. Credence was kind of like borderline for me. I ended up rating that one really highly. I think if I reread it now, I wouldn't love it. And then any release after that has been, unfortunately, like 2 or 3 stars for me. Like I just have not had the best luck with their most recent releases, but I'm ready to be proved wrong and or I'm ready to be surprised and excited, and I'm hoping that this book really delivers. So I have already started it. That's why I am in my car telling you about it. I'm 12% in. I initially was feeling like not great about it, but then the way this last chapter ended, I think it's like the 2nd chapter of the book, I am feeling a little bit hopeful. So the story is about our 2 main characters, Arrow, a girl from kind of the wrong side of the tracks, and our hero Hawken, aka Hawk Trent. He is the son of Jackson and Juliet, aka Casey, from the Fall Away series. So a lot has happened in the little bit that I've read of this book so far. We have Arrow, who I believe is a drug runner from like the wrong side of the tracks, and she is trying to collect money at the very start of the story, and she unfortunately kind of fumbles the bag in a literal sense and is forced to go to kind of like the good part of town and steal from people, I think is kind of like the thought behind it. We actually aren't following her as she's going on this mission. She knows that she needs to get the money, and then we switch to Hawk's point of view. We have Hawk, who is trying to just like protect his family and protect his town and just get through some shit. I think he recently graduated high school. He's going off to college this year, or this next year. I think it's like the summertime. And whenever Arrow comes into this like kind of bar slash hangout space for all of the rich kids of Shelburne Falls, he has to kind of like fight off Arrow because she is like collecting money from Hawk's cousin, Dylan, I want to say her name is, something like that. And Arrow is trying to be like a little bit rough and tumble with some of the people in this establishment because she's not from this side of the tracks. And Hawk is like, what the fuck? Like, you can't come in here and try to like beat people's asses to collect money for like drugs or burner phones, because I think she like has burner phones that she sells these kids. But Hawk ends up having to kind of like chase her down because she leaves the bar after not being able to obtain the money she needs to like pay back the person that she gets the drugs I don't really know her part in things. I'm pretty sure she's just a runner. But there's this sort of like altercation that ends up taking place as Arrow ends up going to the houses of the Trents and like stealing something from them, like an heirloom that doesn't really like have any monetary value. And so Hawk ends up like chasing her to this lake, I want to say, something like that. And some shit goes down. Basically, Hawk ends up trying to save Arrow from getting arrested by the cops because he knows that she can't really afford to do this. Like, he's probably going to get off easy. She wouldn't. So he ends up trying to help her. She ends up sort of bungling it, but he, I think, like destroys a cop car. There's just a lot that's gone down in this past chapter. I honestly can't remember the fine details because my short-term memory is pretty shit at the moment, but I was a little concerned when I first started this book because I didn't really like the darker tone that it was taking. Something about the Fall Away series I like is that it is a bully romance series, but it does have this sort of like, not lightheartedness, but even tone. Like, it's not super dark, it's not super light, it just is. It is like very much based in reality, I feel like. And I feel like a lot of Penelope's work lately has been very dark and very overly long, and there's a lot of plot, not a lot of romance. So I'm hoping that this book doesn't really fall into that trap. Granted, we've had no romance yet, which kind of makes sense. We're only 12% in, but I don't feel like it's overly dark. I feel like it's giving a little bit of a throwback to the Fall Away series because there was like street racing and stuff in that series, so it's not like it was devoid of plot or like risky. So this one definitely has some elements of that, and I'm hoping that it kind of stays in that sort of like middle ground, middle course situation. Like, I don't want it to be super dark. I mean, I can handle it. I just like don't think that that's the most exciting thing ever. It's like, you can't, I was gonna say that you can't make every book dark, but I mean, I guess if that's your thing, whatever. But I don't like that that's the direction that things have been taking lately, and I feel like this one is hopefully going to be less dark. Anyway, I feel like I've been rambling for a hot minute. I keep having cars pass me by and I have to like stop for a second before I can keep filming, so I feel like this has not been super glued together and like, you know, like brain wave coherent. I can't talk today. I am gonna go. I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna keep reading this book, I'm gonna keep you posted, I'm gonna give you my thought-by-thought feelings, just like I did for Credence. I feel like I should do this for every Penelope release, but honestly, if this one doesn't go super well, I don't know how much pen I'm gonna be reading in the future. You can only be let down so many times, but I'll be back with more thoughts. I'm trying to get the buffalo sauce on my shirt out of frame. I'm 20% into Falls Boys. Falls Boys. It's such a weird title to say out loud. Things are heating up, not in a sexual manner, but in the sense that the plot is carrying on in a direction that I'm actually enjoying, I think. I don't want to speak too soon, but I think that I'm enjoying it. Arrow and Hawk, I think I was trying to say previously, are in this sort of situation where Hawk has kind of compromised Arrow. He has stolen some of the drugs. I honestly don't know how the like demonetization works when you're talking about stuff like this, but I'm gonna say goods from now on. How about that? Let's do that. He ends up taking some of the goods that Arrow had in the back of her car that she stole. It wasn't her car, she stole someone's car during this whole like trying to get away sort of situation. He ends up getting rid of a lot of these goods, and Arrow can't go back empty-handed, right? Like she's gonna get completely messed up if she goes back. Like she's not gonna have a good time, and then neither is Hawk. Also pissed off the police, so they're kind of out looking for him, I think. So they're both kind of in a bad situation and they kind of have to team up. I don't think that Arrow wants to team up. She ends up going to her mom's house where her two siblings are, and she's trying to like get money or like get resources from there. In that process, she has like kind of an altercation with the stepfather, and instead of getting herself into deeper shit, Hawk is there for some reason. I guess he like followed her to that house, saves her again for like the second time, takes her to this like lair or back to the lair. I can't remember the order of things. Hawk has access to this, and this is where he's going to hide Arrow. They have to like team up together, I guess, or he's trying to convince her that they should team up. And it's interesting. We are getting some like connections between this series and the first series, and we're also kind of understanding character dynamics between the not siblings, but I guess the cousins and stuff of the children of the Fall Away series. And in some ways I'm enjoying that, in some ways I'm not. I feel like it's a little bit heavy-handed at times, and it can kind of like bog down some of the plot, and or I don't want to have to be consistently thinking in my head, okay, wait, is it important to know that these relationships are the way that they are at this point? Is it just like something that's supposed to entertain me? Is this something I'm supposed to be absorbing? Like, I don't know. Is it fan service? Some of these things I'm not able to work out myself, but I am liking the way that our main characters are characterized. Like, I just like their personalities quite a bit. Hawk is, we find out, a virgin, and he has not had sex with like any of the people at his school, and they kind of give him shit for that, which I think is an interesting take. He's also very, very intelligent, and he seems to have like a pretty big protective streak without being like an alpha hole, as Miss Sarah J. Maas would say. And then we also have Arrow, who very quickly picked up on the fact that Hawk gifted his cousin a watch for Christmas and that it has a tracker on it. So you can definitely tell that there is some, maybe not similarity between the two characters, but they definitely like have common ground and like kind of understand each other a little bit at the very least. They obviously very, very much care about their families, Hawk for sure, and then also Arrow like going back for her siblings and like seeing them and promising them that like, oh, like I'll take you back to school shopping or whatever. So this is definitely like a very plot heavy story, I think, because I'm assuming it's only going to take place over the span of this week, where they're trying to kind of like figure out how to get away with stuff that they've done. I mean, I say stuff. Get away with neither of them going to jail. Good so far, I guess. I don't know if we're gonna get as much relationship development as I want, but we're already kind of heading in a direction that I'm enjoying. I feel like whenever I was reading Trist 6 Venom, there was too much of an enemies to lovers situation going on there for it to really work, and in this case, it's not feeling like that. And I can definitely already see how like the sexual tension is going to be building, I guess. I don't know. I like kind of want them to get together, and not much has happened so far, so I think that bodes well for me enjoying this book. So all right, before the cats kick my ass for not feeding them right at 9 o'clock, I thought I'd update you. I'm like 35% in, and you know what? I do think the romance in this is like a little bit better than the other ones that I've been reading lately from Penn. I'm getting a hint of the romance at 35%, and that's all I'm really asking for. So I feel like I'm understanding the plot even more. I was trying to explain it last time and the time before, and it just like wasn't really working. So essentially, Arrow and Hawk are working together to bring down Arrow's boss. She has a couple of people like above her. There's a guy named Hugo who is basically telling Arrow, hey, if you don't get money for me, if you don't get this money that you owe us back, we're going to basically sell your body, which is not cool. The goal is to take down Hugo's boss, who is in charge of some sort of like drug crime syndicate thing called Green Line. I think the reason that Hawk has a personal connection to this, we learn, is because his parents fostered kids, and one of the foster kids ended up passing away from like being on the drugs that Green Line were, you know, selling to people. So he doesn't want to see the stuff on the streets anymore. Arrow wants to be able to protect her family and also not have to deal with these people coming after her for money. So yeah, they're teaming up, and it's not without frustration and tension on the parts of Arrow and Hawk. Like, they're not excited to have to team up together, but I think they have formed this like begrudging alliance at this point, and I'm liking it. Arrow kind of lets Hawk know that, you know, if she had a different kind of life, she would want to be an astronomer or something like that. And Hawk basically complements her skills in being able to like keep herself alive and support herself and support her family. And he really like admires the fact that she's done so much, even though like, you know, she might be a little bit of a criminal. Like she is doing what she has to do to take care of her family. And I think that Hawk can really respect that given the way that his dad was brought up. Still enjoying the story. I'm still liking it. It doesn't feel like a pen book though, I think is really how I'm feeling. It's kind of reminding me, and I know it's like kind of a weird comparison. There's this like Ali Martinez series, Fighting Silence, I think is one of them. There's like 3 boxers or whatever, like boxing brothers. For some reason it's giving me that energy, like that sort of storytelling, and I'm actually connecting with it, which is cool. I think that the romance here is a little bit slower burn and it is a little bit more intentional, and I'm appreciating that. I'm invested in the storyline, and that's awesome because I'll be honest, like the past few books I just have not been invested in the storyline. I think it was like the last book in the Devil's Night series and Trist 6 Venom. This didn't work for me because I didn't care about the plots, but this one I'm actually kind of caring. So compassion for, I guess, fictional characters or something. I don't know. Honestly, nothing is more of a dead giveaway that a book is written by someone who is not a man when we have the hero in a story saying things like, what, you're like a 34C, right? Just by looking at her boobs. Come on. Even if you have a very intimate knowledge of anatomy of someone who has breasts, I just feel like that's a touch far-fetched. Am I thinking too much into this? But I just feel like this happens a strange amount in romance novel, and I don't understand the point. I guess in this context it was supposed to show that like actually does have interest in sex, kind of, maybe, but I'm vibing. Okay, I'm vibing with this book. I didn't think that I would, but I'm still vibing with it. It just feels real to me, and I like the conversations. It's very Punk 57 to me, you know? We're having some like moral conversations, some conversations about like what life is supposed to be, and I like that Hawk is a little bit more introspective and different than a lot of heroes that I've been reading recently, so yeah, I like it. I think part of it too is that like comparing this to Credence or was it Nightfall? I don't know, I just feel like there wasn't a whole lot of sensitivity in the man. And I'm not saying every man has to be sensitive, but like I would like to understand what's going on in their mind. And I feel like sometimes when you write a hero who is so aggressive, it can be hard to understand them as people. And in this one, I'm understanding the characters, so 10 out of 10. It's the next day, I'm 50% in. I got 50% of the way through this book last night. I honestly kept sneaking chapters, so I'm more like 60% in. It's rare that I am reading a book and I need to stop at a certain benchmark and I just like want to continue to read. Even with good books, I don't tend to have that problem very often, but with this book, for some reason I'm having that problem and I'm actually happy about it. Like I am enjoying this book, it is entertaining, and the plot is slowing down and we're getting more emphasis on the romance, which I think is why I'm so interested and intrigued. I think I mentioned it earlier, but Hawk is characterized as I don't want to say uptight virgin. I think that's how a lot of people in the reviews kind of see him. He is such an interesting character though, and I'm so glad that we have this, I don't want to say representation, but we have this kind of hero in a story because I think it's really rare. Oftentimes, especially in like a college or high school setting, we have like a bully romance, or we have a guy who's like the ladies man jock kind of character. And even if he's not like that, I've just never read a character like this before in a romance, and I'm really enjoying it. And it feels very authentic to the age demographic. Not to like pull out Gen Z studies, but there are a lot of people in Gen Z who are waiting to have sex and who, I don't know, there's just a lot of young people in general, regardless of generation, who don't end up having sex in high school. And I think that it's nice to see a hero who questions things and like wants his first time to be special and wants to really care about who he's with and who thinks about the after. I think that's really like what has been bogging him down in particular, is like, what happens after I have sex with this person? Like, you know, date them forever? Do I have to make promises? It's not that he is scared of commitment, but he just, you know, he has a lot weighing on this decision. I'm gonna get off my soapbox for a second, but we've definitely seen a lot of that in this like 30 to 50% range. The plot has slowed down and we're getting more interactions between Hawk and Arrow beyond just like this begrudging sort of, oh, we have to work together thing. Just love the way that Arrow is able to pick up on Hawk's insecurities and how she doesn't pick on them. She understands them and she thinks that he's a really good man. I think it's really charming. So there have been some scenes where Arrow has like initiated touching not without the promise of sex, but without the possibility of sex. And I think that this has been putting Hawk at ease. He gets to kind of like explore in a way that's, you know, very healthy and without expectation. And it's been like surprisingly steamy, even though there has not been any like real sexual moments there. They've kind of like touched on each other's bodies, but you know, nothing has really been done. And I like it. I think it's great. I think the characters understand each other, and I don't want to ramble too much, but like it's a good time. I'm having fun. And I really want to see what happens next. I do want to see them get together. This feels so contrasted from Trist 6 Venom. That book, I didn't enjoy the plot, and I felt like there was a lot of steam, but I didn't feel any attachment to the vulnerabilities or the actual relationship at the core. It was like, ooh, this is smutty, and like, cool, but like, that's it. This book feels beyond that, and I appreciate that. So definitely different, but it's something that I am really appreciating. Okay, 2 relatively big things have happened. We do have our first sexual encounter between Hawk and Arrow. It was nice. It was very nice. It was steamy. I was into it. It's one of those things where I can, like, understand why people wouldn't like it and can anticipate, like, the criticisms and critiques, because there is, like, jealousy at play and whatever, but they're freshly out of high school, you know? Like, that's gonna be something that is relevant. They go to this pool party. What's interesting to me is that Hawk is, like, totally... Nugget. Really? Sir. What's interesting to me is that Hawk is willing to, like, be seen around town, even though they're technically running from the law. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but they end up going to this pool party that his cousin Kate is hosting to kind of, like, protect her own identity. Arrow ends up wearing, like, a bikini and stuff, and he's like, oh, she's so sexy. There's this, like, situation where Hawk is talking to his ex-girlfriend, and Arrow's like, oh, go ahead, like, you can have sex with her, it's fine. Hawk's, like, upset by this, so he kind of tells her after the fact, like, oh yeah, like, I definitely had some, like, relations with this woman, even though he didn't. There's this kind of, like, steamy altercation that happens between Hawk and Arrow, and he has himself a little feast, if you will. I just like that they both obviously like each other. What is wacky to me is that we have Hawk tell Arrow the story at one point in the story, and it's like this sort of legend, I guess, of this man who was kind of like a voyeur or a watcher or something like that, who's into this woman, and I don't exactly remember all of the details of the story. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but he tells her the story, and it involves the, like, hideout, the tunnels that they're kind of, like, chilling in for most of the book, and then we have a POV chapter from the Creeper. I don't know what his name is, but he's, like, with his friend Deacon, and he's talking about Hawk, and is like, yeah, like, I know that he knows that we've been checking in on him, but he can't find us, or who are these people and how are they playing? I don't understand the relevance of this. I'm sure it will, I don't know, maybe they're gonna help Hawk and Arrow get away with whatever's happening. Anyway, also it's not Green Line, it's Green Street that they're trying to run from. I don't know how street racing, drag racing, it's neither of those things. Regular racing, I guess, leads to neck tattoos. What the fuck? Arrow's in Dylan's car. Dylan is Hawk's cousin, and she's doing her final race, and some shit goes down on the middle of the racetrack, and all of the Green Street dudes, aka Arrow's foster brothers, are like, you have to come with us, it's time to come home. Hawk ends up getting a Green Street tattoo and is now, like, Arrow's keeper? Like, that's the way to keep her safe? What is going on? Just finished up one of my Sunday rituals, which is enjoying McDonald's in the parking lot of a bank, because it's Sunday, the bank's not open. I'm liking it still. Are we surprised? Are we shocked? I'm shocked. I don't remember what I last told you. I do, however, know that there have been a multitude of sex scenes and some weird plot things going on. I think, actually, the last thing I said was that they had sex, or they had, like, some sort of sexual encounter, and that there was, like, a weird story that we were told. Now the weird story is kind of taking root as part of the plot, and there's been some penetrative moments, if you will. I'm actually enjoying the sex scenes. I feel like they're not overdone. There have been quite a few back to back, but I feel like it makes sense given the context of, like, what the characters are, like, going through, and it's like I don't want to say a good way for them to bond, but it kind of is, okay? I'm liking it. They can do what they want. What I'm not 100% sold on, though, is, like, where the plot's going. So we had this, like, story that we were told about the Marauders, and we know apparently that they're real people, and I'm sort of unsure of, like, what's gonna go down, but apparently that's gonna be the conflict of the book now, and not this whole Green Street thing, I guess. Ever since Hawk gets a fucking tattoo and, you know, puts hidden cameras in the bad guy's lair, like, you know, he's in jail, whatever, like, it's done. That doesn't really make much sense, and also I find it a little bit too convenient that Hawk's parents fostered kids, and so now they have connection with CPS and can take Arrow's siblings, and I do appreciate the efforts that Penelope Douglas is going to make the parents of the story, like, a part of the story as fan service, but also, like, I feel like one of the critiques of the Follow-Away series is that the parents are not very involved. I mean, I guess they're involved more so than some other new adult series, but in this series in particular, we do have a lot more parental involvement, which I do like, and it does, I feel like, lend an air of authenticity to the story. I mean, how often are kids able to just, like, run around unsupervised? I don't know. Maybe your upbringing was different, but, like, some of the shit that kids in these books get up to, I'm just like, my parents would have been fucking pissed, you know? Like, that would not have, that would not fly. And in this series, like, I like that the kids are given freedom, but, like, their parents are very involved in their lives, and I like the relationships too between some of the other characters, like the side characters. Dylan and Arrow are kind of becoming friends and sharing clothes and stuff, and I really like that. I think it's really easy to have, like, the character from the wrong side of the tracks be completely shunned, and that's just, like, not the case here, which I am really enjoying. Like, I'm glad about that. Like I said, I don't know that I'm loving where the plot's going, but I also don't know that I care so much, because at this point I'm like almost 90% into this book, which is just nutty to me. I think I'll be kind of happy no matter how it ends. I mean, unless something just drastically bad happens, like I think I'm gonna like the ending. Also, so sweet moment. We find out that Hawk is also into astronomy. He takes her to an observatory or something like that. I don't remember. But Dylan lets Arrow know that that's like one of Hawk's interests, and you're just like, they have stuff in common. The plot fucking thickens. The plot's both good and bad. The Marauders thing didn't really like come to be. The, like, in my opinion, culmination of the plot is when they end up having to run from Hugo and the gang because he's still trying to, like, collect money and or Arrow. And so there's this scene on the train tracks where everybody's standing there, and Hugo says whoever is left on the tracks as the train comes, like whoever stays up there the longest before, you know, jumping into the river below, gets to keep Arrow. Kind of silly, whatever. She ends up staying up there the longest, and so I guess she gets to keep herself, whatever, something like that. So everybody goes home, everything's like kind of okay. Also, I didn't realize that Reeves is a cop. I guess I just have no reading comprehension skills. So he's a cop, but he's also working with Greenstreet, I suppose. Is he working with Greenstreet, or is he just, I don't know. I don't really care. It doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. I'm sure I'll figure it out next time I read this book. But an interesting development is that we keep getting hints that the twins, Cade and Hunter, who are Maddox and Fallon's kids, don't get along very well. And so Cade is kind of just like his dad. It's into a lot of trouble. He's definitely like kind of a douche. And then Hunter is kind of like the more quiet type, and he didn't do so well at the high school that everybody goes to. So he went to, or he's going to a private school instead. When everybody like gets back from the train tracks and goes to stay at Cade's house overnight, we know that like someone maybe broke into the house because Maddox's laptop is not where it normally is, and then they find the laptop safe in a safe, and so everybody's like, oh, it must have been Hunter. Hunter must have come and put the laptop away and, like, you know, saved his family or some shit. I don't even know what's on the laptop because, like, Maddox is the mayor now. It's a stand-up guy, so, like, what do they even have on him? I don't really know, but just interesting that, like, Hunter is kind of, like, player in this world, and I'm hoping that his book is next. I honestly don't know, but he seems very intriguing, and he seems like he could be similar to Hawk. I actually like Hawk. I don't know, man. I just think he's great. I'm like desperate to know more about the dynamic between Cade and Hunter. And I really have to give props to Penelope Douglas in contrast to some other authors who have tried to do the same like second generation stories thing. Because I feel like the parents that we like, you know, grew to love in their stories tend to not be very good in like the spin-off series and the second generation books. They end up having to be shitty parents so that our characters have backstory, or I mean honestly that's it. That's like usually what happens. And in this story it seems like any conflict or any interesting traits of the characters are not so much because they had shitty parents, but just, you know, a circumstance of growing up. Like having Cade and Hunter be sort of like not best friends, I think is something that's normal and happens despite your upbringing, despite how great your parents could be. Sometimes you just don't get along with your siblings. So I don't know why I decided to like go on that tangent, but it's something I've been thinking about as I've been reading these books. I feel like the parents are really great. They obviously still have flaws and stuff, but I think that like I appreciate the inclusion. Another thing that I didn't mention is that Noah from Credence is staying at Dylan and Jared Trent and Tate's house. We keep getting told that like he is not a potential love interest, but like I would love to see it. I don't know. It'd be a pretty big age gap, so I don't really think that's gonna happen, but like Birthday Girl Part 2, I would be here for it. Okay, I just finished Falls Boys. I think I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. I feel like we're returning back to, I don't want to say the old pen. I feel like authors evolve and their styles change, but I feel like this story felt a lot more coherent. I felt like the romance was definitely at the center of it, and I'm excited to learn more about this world, to see the plots continue, and to just see what happens. There is a preview for the next book in the end of this one, and I think I'm gonna read it soon. I also really enjoyed the author's note at the end. It's just so interesting seeing where authors come from when they're writing a certain story, and it seems like Pen's story is pretty similar to Arrow's, and so they're definitely writing from experience, and I thought that that was pretty nice, and I feel like you can feel it in the writing. I will say like the ending was a little bit weird in that I say that it didn't feel complete, but I guess it doesn't feel complete because the plot is going to carry on over like the course of the story. But I don't feel like we got a very satisfying ending to the whole like Greenstreet Reeves situation. I really need to go back and reread the beginning of this book because I don't feel like I really fully understand Greenstreet, and I also don't fully understand the whole like Marauders and like town story, I guess you could say. Penn really likes to do this thing where they include like a story within a story, or, you know, like Devil's Night, like that was a whole thing, something that happened in the past but like comes back up, and that's definitely here. It's like town history coming into play in the plotline of the book. Like we do kind of get to meet one of the Marauders, is that what they're called? I don't really know. We get to meet someone who ends up saving Arrow in a situation, like pulling her back through the mirror so she doesn't get caught by Reeves, but I don't know. The plot just didn't feel totally complete in that regard, but again, it makes sense because the series is going to continue. But in other ways, I feel like the plot wrapped up in a way that I was satisfied with. I was really happy to see that Arrow's siblings ended up staying with Jax and Juliet. I am really excited for her to finish out her high school career and get to kind of decide her future for herself and not have to be consistently stressed and worried about, you know, taking care of other people. I really liked that, and I really liked the support that Arrow gets at the end of the story. It felt really nice, and it felt like something that could really, I guess, happen in real life. You know, a lot of new adult stories can be kind of far-fetched, but I really appreciated how this one ended, and I don't know, it was just a really fun time. I liked the romance at the center of it. I liked kind of everything about it, and for me, like, the marker of a good KU story is whether or not I would purchase it in paperback, and I certainly anticipate picking up a copy of this one for myself. So I thought it was a whole lot of fun. I'm excited to reread it, and I'm excited for the next book in the series. I don't know why you'd be watching this if you haven't read the book, but like, read the book if you haven't. It's good. I had a really good time with it, and I'm really glad that I got the opportunity to vlog it. I went back and watched my Credence vlog recently, and I feel like that one was so much more entertaining than this one. But you know what? Like, this is just a book that didn't have a lot of like jaw-dropping moments, but I appreciated kind of like the quietness of the romance. I mean, it was still passionate and steamy, but it wasn't group scene-y, which I think is actually a complaint that a lot of people have had recently about some of Penn's books, but this one didn't have any group scenes, if that's something that you're not into. So anyway, that's kind of it. I had a good time. I hope that maybe you enjoyed this in some way. I love you so much, and until next Sunday.